I'm William Kumwembe and this is Business Time. It is a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. For 52 weeks in a row, we have been bringing you major business and economic news stories happening in the country and beyond. Consistently, we engaged policymakers and movers and shakers of the economy in setting a tone on policy direction in as far as the economic is concerned, while speaking to general populace and covering the hardships they are enduring due to volatility of the economy. We have been attaching a human face to the figures and the numbers defining the economy. And in this week's edition of the program, the final one for the year 2022, we take you through major highlights in as far as business and economic landscape is concerned. Also, we'll give you a glimpse on what it takes to produce a program like this. Hello and welcome. This is Business Time. In a few days, we will exit 2022, but with bruises brought about by the economic hardships many Malawians have endured in the year. To say the least, 2022 is looked at by many as a year to forget, as increasing commodity prices made life almost unbearable for everyone. Everyone is looking forward to the flipping of the calendar, which in itself will not bring the remedies to our economic mishaps. Malawi aims to attain a middle-income economic mark at least within the next 8 years, a target it failed to meet within the 20 years of implementing the flopped Vision 2020. Now, there have been a lot of questions over to achieve the target, and the country needs to be posting at least 6% of GDP growth rate in real terms per year within the next decade. But lately, Malawi's economy has been riddled with both exogenous and structural challenges, which have stifled chances of growth, with the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, projecting a GDP growth of 0.9% in 2022 from an earlier 2.7% estimate. While still nursing effects of the COVID pandemic, Malawi was susceptible to other exogenous shocks emanating from disrupted global supply chains due to the Russo-Ukrainian war, among other things. This, coupled with other domestic structural challenges, pushed up cost of commodities, with headline inflation, the rate at which commodity prices change at a given time in an economy, remaining on an upward spiral in the 10 months to October to 26.7% before decelerating slightly by 0.9% to 25.5% in November 2022. Now, there seems to be differences in opinion over reviewing midterm projection based on the 2022 economic performance. The central bank custodians of the monetary policy recommended a downward review of the Malawi's medium-term gross domestic product target to reflect current economic challenges. Now, we caught up with the Reserve Bank of Malawi Governor, Wilson Banda, for an insight.
Looking at the growth projections from the national economic planning, those are very pessimistic. I mean, they're very optimistic. They are looking at the economy growing at the minimum by 6% in real terms per year over the next couple of years, certainly into the medium term. And I'm saying to them, given all the external shocks, how sure are we that we are going to achieve those growth rates? And indeed, those growth rates are necessary for the country to definitely create enough wealth to move into the middle income status. The theoretical response to this is that other things held constant, i.e. you are not suffering any of these external shocks, and two, you are doing everything that is anticipated or is proposed within the strategy, then the country should actually attain those the high growth rates. In theory, that is quite possible, is quite true. In practice, it becomes a challenge. So as a nation, I'm saying that yes, we should be aiming at those high growth rates, but we should also be mindful of the fact that we are living in the real world, and there are all sorts of external shocks that can take us off course. That's the only thing that I was mentioning, that we should be mindful of these things happening. Well, it is true. I mean, for the economy to stabilize, obviously you need to see your economy grow. And that's the point we've always made, that once we deal with the inflation as a short-term problem, we should also be looking at longer-term, medium to longer-term growth. In that way, you are assured of more stability in the economy. If the economy doesn't grow, rest assured you have more instability, even in the short term, of things like inflation. So the two are not inconsistent. It's consistent that for you to achieve stability on all fronts, all macroeconomic indicators, you need to grow.
National Planning Commission, a government entity mandated to develop national development blueprints and oversee implementation, believes the current situation requires doing things differently. NPC Director General is Thomas Mutara, and says the country should not downgrade its growth estimate and instead should work towards addressing structural economic challenges.
No, I don't think the issue is about downgrading. Because the moment you're downgrading, it's like you're accepting that, look, I think we can't do anything about it. Now, let's just accept. That's accepting defeat. I strongly believe that the targets, which we're talking about average of 6%, should still remain intact. But what we should be asking ourselves is, what can we do differently to make sure that the targets that we've set for ourselves are still achieved? I think in this country, we've got a lot of opportunities that we've not harnessed. When you're looking at, for example, the areas of tourism, a very big potential that is sitting there. All we need to do, some of these are very simple things. Change your visa regime. You don't have to, because you're competing with Zambia, Mozambique, Tanzania. Some of these countries have got far much advanced tourism, centers. If we're to compete with them, we have to make sure that we're competitive in what we're offering in terms of them coming here. Simple things like changing the visa regime would make business conferences to happen here. Because people say, look, if you go to Malawi, you don't need a visa. You get it on the point of entry. We're not saying visas should not be there, because it's also a security issue. But the issue is, allow them to come, give them free on point of entry. If you look at it actually, the amount that you get from visas is nothing. You hardly get anything from visas. But because of the restriction of you need to get an e-visa from wherever you're coming from, and our e-visa system is almost all the time down. Meaning they fail, they say, look guys, I think, why don't we do it in Zambia? Why don't we do it in Rwanda? Because Rwanda, you get it on the point of entry. So they are planning ahead of time all the conferences, Rwanda. Why? Because you've made yourselves hard to come. So these are simple things that if we agree to say, if we're maintaining these targets, and those targets were actually modest, we can do better. As a country, we've got a lot of potential. The same if you're looking at mining. We keep on sitting on mineral mining development agreements. Kairekera can just start off immediately. But what does it take? We keep on discussing the mineral development agreements for long and long. The same with niobium. It's the investors are already ready. What they're saying is, okay, let's agree. And the laws are clear. You get this 5%, you get this, you get that, then you sign. But if we sometimes take all our time as if we've got the luxury of time, as a nation, we don't have that luxury. We can no longer be walking. We should be running, because if we're to catch up with our own targets and what the rest of the surrounding countries are up to, then so the point that I'm making, William, is we've got what it takes if all we do is to focus on what we've clearly outlined as catalytic interventions in MIP1.
Now, due to disruptions in global commodities supply chain, coupled with other structural challenges the country has been facing, commodity prices remained on an upward spiral in the year. Headline inflation, as we said, the rate at which commodity prices change at a given period in an economy, maintained an upward spiral for a greater part of the year 2022, except in November, when it eased by 0.9 percentage points to 25.8% from 26.7% in October. This means while cost of living remains elevated, income for most Malawians was either static or squeezed altogether. Many government officials are on record blaming the Russo-Ukrainian war for their vice. But what interventions did the government deploy? Sosten Gwengwe is the Minister of Finance.
The economy is going through a tough patch, and the patch that we're going through really is to be able to look at our issues of debt and see how best we can address them. we've avoided the temptation of solving a debt problem by committing or contracting more debts, which is what has been happening the past decade in this country, and that has just made matters much, much worse. We are trying to explore a window, no matter how tight it is, to see if we can deal with our debt problem by using other means other than just getting more and more debts, because what has been happening the past few years is just postponing our problems, and we will reach a point where we can't really postpone anymore. We really must confront this monster head on, and we are really looking at that tight window to see if this can be the moment, no matter how painful it might be, but look at solutions which are more sustainable rather than, for political reasons, or just postponing a problem for a year or two as long as you pass through an election. That has not benefited Malawians, and we are very resilient and resolute to see if we can find a sustainable path out of this whole issue of unsustainable debts for our country. Well, you would know that one's primary aim in a ministry like the one I hold is to grow the economy. And it becomes extremely, extremely difficult and challenging when you have issues to do with food supply, when you have issues to do with energy supply, and we have issues of shortages of forex. So all this impact on the private sector, and our primary job is to make sure that we salvage the situation in favor of private sector, so that private sector starts ticking again, resolve the energy issue as quickly as possible, and we know that in the next 1 or 2 months we should really be back on our feet energy-wise, and that will translate again to other savings. Fuel demand is going to be lessened, and you would see that if all these things are put together and private sector has started ticking, then we can now start talking of growing the economy and all that. But right now we are at a patch where we need to be more resilient and see how we come out of it. And we are very confident that the plans that are on the table, it's a matter of time, but things should start looking up better, more so that the discussions that we'll be having with our partners, we are reaching a stage where a resolution should be made, so that the way forward for Malawi should really come out more clear than the way things are right now.
Remember, this is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. And in the program today, we are taking you through major events and unveilings of the economy and business landscape in the year 2022. Talking of policy interventions in a desperate attempt to contain the inflationary pressure, twice in a row, the Reserve Bank of Malawi adjusted upwards its policy rate, the rate at which commercial banks borrow from the central bank as lender of last resort, to 18%. Also in May 2022, the Reserve Bank of Malawi announced a 25% devaluation of the local unit, the kwacha, over what it called giving it its real value. This came due to the glaring mismatches between forex demand and supply. Malawi remains a net importer, and trade deficit is always growing wide, as annual imports bill is pegged at $3 billion compared to exports revenue, which is tagged at $1 billion. Due to scarcity of the dollar, many basic commodities became scarce, and the country saw a repetition of the 2012 experience of long queues on filling stations as pumps ran dry. The obvious question everyone was asking was, Malawi seemed not to learn from past experience, and the question is why? This is a question we also posed to Leslie Fachi, who is Finance Market Dealers Association of Malawi president.
I think that's a question that should then propel us into thinking of what to do next. The key issue that we have always struggled with as an economy is that we are continually importing. We are continually importing, and we are continually a consuming economy. Now, with that, what it means is we will continue to require foreign currency for us to be able even to eat. So at the moment, the biggest challenge you have is we are not producing enough, first for ourselves, for us to be able to eat, to sustain our lives, but most importantly, we would then have to graduate into exporting, because that's what everyone else is doing. The countries we're buying from are also into production. And it's that production, the excess, that they are exporting to us. So once we fix the fundamental industrial issues, then we'll be okay. But as a country, if you look at most of what we do most of the times is we look at short-term goals. I do not think we have aligned ourselves to these long-term strategic objectives. We do have the plans, but our actions do not align to these strategic plans. If we look specifically into the Malawi 2063, you'll see all these things are being respelled. We had them already in Vision 2020. We are coming back to say, let's achieve this, of course, with more focus. If we align our short-term goals into these long-term goals, then we should be able to achieve what we want. It's the implementation that is lacking. Well, anyone who comes on the podium to preach devaluation is not going to be liked by the masses. Why? I think we all understand, in an importing economy like ours, like we're saying, the moment you devalue, the first thing that will do is it will increase the cost of everything that we are importing. That's inflationary on its own. And now every local Malawian, every citizen of this country will not like to see an increase in the prices. Now the question is, we know devaluation does work, but in what kind of economy does it work?
Welcome back. This is Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. Okay. We cannot talk about the year 2022 without a touch on persistent power outages that crippled most sectors of the economy. In Malawi, where less than 12% of the population has access to electricity, the lack of reliable power supply is a major constraint to business and economic growth. Malawian firms consistently cite weakness in the electricity sector as one of the major obstacles to doing business. When power cuts out, big firms must either shut down or increase the cost of production by using fewer generators. Indeed, the buzz of the generators is common background in major cities of the country for them to operate. Now, there is still hope. Beyond February 2023, at least if what the energy generation company of Malawi officials say is anything to go by, as Kapitula will be up and running by then. Well, that story also brings us to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time, where we're giving you major highlights of business and economy in the year 2022. But we cannot go without giving you a glimpse of how the production process of the program goes. Well, producing and presenting Business Time is one of the most fascinating, but at the same time, challenging tasks. Why? Because it involves always getting on the ground, hearing and listening to the voice of the populace on the ground and amplifying the same, getting it into air-conditioned rooms where movers and shakers of the economy are, to have a response in as far as policy direction and intervention is concerned. One of the critical things about Business Time is where we put a human face to the figures and the numbers. You know, business and economic reporting is all about figures and numbers, but we try to contextualize the figures and the numbers and relate them to the masses to say, what do those figures and numbers mean? It's never an easy task, so to speak, because it involves conceptualization. It involves always coming up together with the rest of the team, putting up a program that should be appealing to both the general populace and the movers and the shakers of the economy. As if that is not enough, there are moments when it's almost hard to find content and material for the program. So if I take you through the year, I would say it's been a mixed bag. Well, I can say as a team we've tried. We've put our effort in putting up programs for the past 52 weeks that are appealing to all Malawians regardless of socioeconomic status. We have put up programs that, in my view, have been appealing. Standing in front of the camera always brings that level of excitement and fear at the same time, because there have been moments where you have mastered the script, for example, to say, this is how the structure of the program would be. but you go off script sometimes. You miss the script, and then you're like, wow, how has this happened? So the program in the production process has never been devoid of I would call them goofs. I am never at peace sharing this side of the post-production aspect. I know Francis and everyone else who is always behind the camera would be comfortable sharing such clips, but it just gives you a picture to say we are real in presenting the program. There are moments where we make mistakes, and then we should say kudos to the team that is always working tirelessly to ensure that those mistakes get kept.
Can I take that one again? I think I was speeding.
Now, in other business news, the Malawi Stock Exchange is seen as an ideal tool for raising easy capital for companies and firms in the country. And also, the stock market is perceived to be one of the most effective ideals. One of the most effective ideals. No, not that.
Welcome back. This is Business Time, and moving on with other business news stories. Last week, the Reserve Bank of Malawi's Monetary Policy Committee announced an adjustment of the policy rate, the rate at which it charges commercial banks the rate at which commercial banks borrow.
Hello and welcome. This is Business Time. In our main story in the program today, in the first 3 months of the 2022-2023 financial year, Malawi collected Malawi Revenue Authority. Hello and welcome. This is Business Time, and my name is William Kumwembe. Hello and welcome. This is Business Time, and my name is William Kumwembe. In the program, introduction, main story. Now, the Malawi economy has been faced with a number of challenges affecting many sectors. The Malawi economy has been faced with a number of challenges lately. Now, for quite some time now, the Malawi economy has been faced with many challenges that is affecting operations and growth prospects. For instance, the country is hard hit by forex and fuel scarcity. That interview also brings us to the end of today's edition of the program Business Time, a magazine program in which we bring you major business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. My name is William Kumwembe, but always remember, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. Should I say soon we'll be having New Year and Happy New Year and Merry Christmas? Kabinati Ngomaliza. On that lighter note, we've also come to the end of the final edition of the program Business Time in the year 2022. It's been a year packed with a lot of packages bringing forth business and economic news stories making headlines in the country. On behalf of the entire production team, my name is William Kumwembe. Always remember, if it doesn't make money, then it doesn't make sense. Stay safe and bye for now.